Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and just when you thought things may have grown cold on the 49er front, they decide to ramp things back up to 11 and turn that dial all the way up and have what I'm calling so far their most exciting day of free agency through 4 days, because Mike Evans, he comes to Levi Stadium for the first time, shares why he joined the San Francisco 49ers this offseason and what player on the roster helped convince him to join San Francisco as a free agent. We also got what has been maybe one of the most obvious yet questionable, yet maybe one of the bigger fan reactions to a move, that being the reunion with linebacker Dre Greenlaw. We'll get into the good and the bad of that deal. In San Francisco, kind of got some not so great news with Bryce Huff retiring out of nowhere this evening, and then late tonight, that being on March 12th, Thursday, they signed Nate Hobbs, a cornerback. We'll get into what he brings to the table and what it can mean for this new Raheem Morris defense with the San Francisco 49ers. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And let's dive into day 4 of free agency, because this day was loaded. Again, it was quiet initially. I'm sitting at home, working at home on my laptop, and I'm thinking, man, it's a nice day, not much news. I'm making videos, making shorts, trying to get content out, manufacture it myself. And then it felt like an avalanche of news just piled up back to back to back to back. And it was like, oh my God, stop. It's too much. I cannot keep up with what happened today, starting off around 11 a.m. on the West Coast, that being Mike Evans, the future Hall of Fame wide receiver who signed a 3-year contract with the San Francisco 49ers. He talked to the media for the first time today and answered a lot of big questions pertaining to why he signed in San Francisco, who convinced him to join San Francisco, but also why he believes he might be the missing link to a Super Bowl championship. And let's start things off at the top, because I think one of the biggest things Mike Evans said today was he shared with us who was responsible. What was one of the people, who was one of the players responsible for getting him to join the Niners? Because Mike Evans had no reason to. Played in Florida his entire career, could have stayed in Tampa Bay, had offers elsewhere on the table. And he said, you know what? I'm choosing the San Francisco 49ers. I'll let Mike Evans share with you what he thought and why he joined San Francisco. But I think you'll find the answer pretty interesting. And it's not just the faithful, albeit he did give them credit as well. It certainly wasn't myself. He has no idea who I am. It definitely wasn't some playoff losses that have hurt them in the past. But he gave one player the most credit for bringing him to San Francisco as a free agent. And I'll let Mike Evans tell you right now.
I've talked to most of the guys already on the team. Great players, great dudes. I knew a lot of them from Pro Bowls and just seeing them around the league after games and things like that. But George was the biggest salesman. I mean, George sold it big time, and he's a big reason why I'm here, just because the type of player and teammate that he is.
George Kittle, a forever Niner. If there was any more reasons to love George Kittle, it's him convincing, his energy, the way he plays the game. I'm sure in maybe previous days, weeks, months, years, Pro Bowls they've been to together, they've talked about how great playing at Levi Stadium is. And Mike Evans talked about the energy the faithful bring to game day and whatnot. But to hear that George Kittle, who may not play at the beginning of this season, but his play style, him being an advocate, an ambassador for the franchise, being a big reason as to why Mike Evans signs. Kittle's legacy is already cemented in San Francisco, but being able to coerce somebody who had no reason to leave Tampa Bay, that had offers from Tampa Bay to easily go back home, to get that guy to say, you know what, I'm going to test myself. I have something to prove, and I'm going to go play with George Kittle. that's really cool to see, really cool to hear. San Francisco, albeit in this case Santa Clara, has been getting a bad rap recently, whether it's the contracts they've been handed out, the receivers that have become divas and been given big contracts and failed to live up to those contracts. Debo, Ayuk, Jennings could have been there, but is a free agent. Still, we'll get into him later on in today's show as well. But also the substation stuff, the playoff losses of this is an oddly ran organization currently. They're kind of fickle at times, and maybe the contractual stuff with Parag and Jed, there's just been kind of a cloud that I think the fan base feels more than the actual players feel. But there is some type of looming kind of in the background of undertones of it's kind of weird at times to circumnavigate that and just be like, look, Mike, you love football. I love football. I'm George Kittle in this case. I love football. Let's play together. We have Kyle's a great offensive coordinator. Purdy's a great quarterback. We have Christian McCaffrey. Your color schemes won't change too much. Your outfits may be able to kind of coexist together. And it's a great place for weather and a great state to live in when it comes to just the vibes and being a millionaire for sure. It's a lot easier to live when you're a millionaire out here in California. So just kind of a nice tip of the hat to George of the way he plays the game, the way he carries himself, the ambassador-esque vibes he gives, or the way he talks about playing for the 49ers and the constant, George always gushes in the media playing for this organization, and to have that, that means a lot. Yes, to the players, to Kyle, to John Lynch, and the team itself, but for the fan base, it's really hard to find players like George Kittle. So I just wanted to give Kittle his credit, but also Mike Evans knows ball. He knows how fruitful playing in San Francisco can be. And that was really shown by his second answer he gave today, because he mentioned that as a free agent for the first time in a long time, maybe ever in his career, as an unrestricted free agent, he was doing his own research, on teams, on the weather, on locations, on organizations, on front offices. He was going in, diving deep and saying, what makes the most sense to me? I'm going to be 33 years old. This could be my last contract ever. I want to make sure I make the right decision. And according to him, it seemed like it was down to three places. Going back to Tampa Bay, that's a fallback, easy option. The other one was going to San Francisco, taking some less money, getting taxed out the wazoo, losing half of that guaranteed contract from the get-go. But also, he mentioned going to Buffalo and playing with Josh Allen and the Bills. And he essentially told the media today that, yeah, I chose San Francisco. I chose Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan over what the Bills had going on. And that's even after DJ Moore was involved via trade. This was leading into free agency and the legal tampering period of things. You was saying, I'm picking San Francisco and what they have going on over what's happening in Buffalo. And keep in mind, Buffalo has an MVP winning quarterback and a brand new head coach that was the OC. And albeit their run a little more dysfunctional than San Francisco is, their GM's kind of a kook, but it just seems like he realized San Francisco was, despite their drawbacks and their pitfalls, they're a well-run organization. And I think a big selling point for him actually was Brock Purdy, because Mike Evans went on to say that he believes Brock Purdy, can be an MVP candidate again. And he already was once in 2023, but he can do it again. And it's funny to kind of, as a fan, as a podcaster, media member, kind of look back and try to kind of tie things. During free agency, the ties you usually see, the connections people draw are, oh, this coach left this place, and now he's taking players from his former destination and bringing them to the new place. John Harbaugh with the Giants, signing Baltimore Ravens. Raheem Morris right now signing Atlanta Falcons in free agency, which is shocking. But those are kind of the common connections you make. However, Evans kind of threw it back all the way to Brock Purdy's first year and said, Purdy is a true professional. really underrated player. His first start was against my Buccaneers in 2022. That's when Purdy beat Tom Brady, took a massive hit on the first snap of the game. I think he broke his ribs later in the game, then beat the Seattle Seahawks on the road to clinch the division the next week. But anyways, Evans basically said, like, right then and there, Purdy's very first start, I realized, wow, that's a good player. That I can help him grow. He can help me be productive. And that's really cool to see. Like, Mike Evans is playing next to Tom Brady. He won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And he had Baker Mayfield. Baker's a good quarterback. Like, again, he could have easily gone back to Tampa Bay. That's a fine organization. They're run really well. Todd Bowles is a veteran head coach. And, like, there's a lot of comfortability there. When they're going, the Bucs have a really good offense in place, with a lot of weapons in place. Godwin, Ibuka, Baker. They got Bucky Irving. Like, there was no reason to leave. And he was like, I want to go play for Kyle Shanahan. I want to go play for Brock Purdy. I saw what Brock can do 4 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's for real. And that to me is, an indication of if a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, if you already didn't believe in Brock, or maybe you are a little bullish still after what happened last season, you're hearing a future Hall of Fame wide receiver say, no, like, we knew from the beginning that was a good player, which is shocking because this isn't somebody in the building. This is not Fred Warner and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey were like, oh yeah, Purdy's great, because you're going to back your own guys up, right? This is somebody else on a different team that is leaving their comfortable quarterback that's probably around the top 15 quarterbacks in the league, sometimes top 10 on a good day, right? In a place that he's lived his, last 15, 13 years of life at, playing in the NFL, and saying, I want to travel across the country because I want to play with that dude. That guy impressed me so much 4 years ago that I want to play with him. And that's really cool. And it shows you, one, not just how good Brock Purdy is, but also how respected he is across the NFL. Like, Mike Evans is giving Brock Purdy his flowers here in a big way, saying, I want to pick you over Josh Allen and the Bills. Now, I don't think Mike Evans is saying that Purdy's better than Josh Allen by any means. I think he's saying is the Niners are in a better place than what the Bills are and what Tampa Bay is. And that's despite playing the Seahawks and the Rams in the same division twice a year. That's really cool, at least in my opinion. But, there are some questions about Mike Evans. The injury stuff, what left do you have to prove? You're going to the Hall of Fame. You had 11 1,000-yard consecutive seasons prior to last year. Like, you're up there with the best receiver of the last, decade conversation. You are at least top 3, and in some people's eyes, you're top 1. What's left for Mike Evans? What do you have to prove? Well, he answered that today as well, stating, absolutely, I want to show that I'm still who people believe that I am. And that's one of the best to ever do it. This is a guy last year who had a lot of injuries, that missed some time, that maybe to some degree felt phased out of the offense in Tampa Bay. You have Godwin. You have Ibuka, first-round draft pick. Evans is kind of being pushed towards the past year. Now you're 32, going on 33. First-round receiver in place. Okay, we'll keep you around as the third option. And Mike's like, dude, I'm an alpha. I've been an alpha my entire career. I've been one of the best ever. And I still believe I can be that on somebody else's team. And that team is the San Francisco 49ers, who I think would eagerly invite the dog in Mike Evans to come out. And, one thing I noticed, and this isn't really Mike Evans, kind of specific, but I was going through the offseason so far, and San Francisco hasn't lost too many big names by any means, but it's the ones they brought in. Like, I think Dre Greenlaw was a captain on the Broncos last year. If he wasn't, we know he's kind of a captain, kind of 1B type player. But more importantly, Mike Evans, a captain for the Buccaneers. the guy from the Cowboys they brought in, Osa, a captain for the Cowboys. Like, they're bringing in captains around the league and saying, "Hey, come to San Francisco. We'll trade for you. We'll sign you." And there's a variety of outcomes those players can bring to the table. But like, the Niners aren't settling for bargain bin Luke Farrells and Luke Giffords. No offense, they're getting captain level respected guys across the NFL coming in saying, "I want to be here. I have things to prove and people to kind of show off against and kind of prove wrong." And some guys want new contracts, and some guys want to say, I still got it. And also, like, you lose Brandon Ayuk, you lose Jauan Jennings, you lose some smaller players. You're also going to infuse more leadership into your offense, into your defense with Osa and Mike Evans, guys that not just were liked on their teams, but were given captain labels over other guys. Evans deserved it over everybody else. But Osa, for example, on Dallas, like Dak, you can pick CD. You can go on and on and on of guys that deserve the captain label. He got it. And it was like, oh, wow. Okay, like, that's a team voted thing. So they're getting high character guys, leadership back in the room, and more importantly, dudes that they think can play. And I think one more important kind of cherry on top of this Mike Evans talk, before you kind of put a pin in it, is that, they asked Mike Evans, like, why do you want to come to San Francisco? You mentioned Kittle, and he kind of, the way he plays kind of convinced you to join the team, and you want to prove maybe some people wrong, but why did you want to join the San Francisco 49ers? And to kind of sum up his words, he said, this team last year was one piece away. Now that's kind of a crazy statement. I don't think that's the case. But from an outside point of view, I think he realized that this team needs an X wide receiver, and I can be that for them. They need me as much as I need them. And I think with him saying they were one piece away and I can be that one piece, that missing piece, kind of push him over the top, it's almost the confidence, but also I think it's just, this is the perfect marriage of these two groups, these two parties of, sometimes you pay a player reluctantly, like Brandon Ayuk, and sometimes you pay players because you have a need. It's sometimes a 33-year-old wide receiver is like, I need one last chance. And after a down season last year, there is this sense of, we belong together, if you want to quote Mariah Carey in this case. And so it kind of just goes into the point of, not that it's fate, that's ridiculous, but it's like, this is a good fit for a lot of reasons, mainly because both parties need each other. And what Mike Evans brings to the table is just so important, what San Francisco wants to do offensively, but also behind the scenes too, impacting young receivers in the offense, knowing where to go, being, like, I can flash forward to training camp in the preseason, and hopefully if he's healthy for the whole year, the regular season too, with Purdy and Mike Evans, the chemistry those two guys should have is going to be outstanding. Like, you're talking about two guys that if it clicks, oh my God, watch out. We saw Ayuk and Purdy and what that led to in 2023. You ain't seen that since 2023. It's been 3 years since then, 2 years since then. So I am eagerly anticipating. That said, we have to ask the question, is Mike Evans the missing piece, and what can the expectations be? You dig into some of the veteran pieces San Francisco's brought in over, the last, 15 years or so, 10 years or so, and the likes of Anquan Boldin come up, Isaac Bruce come up, Randy Moss come up, right? Guys that are age 32, 33, older in their careers, kind of looking for one last ride. And there's been it's been a very different outcome for a lot of those people, but all of them have been relatively productive when joining San Francisco. You go to Anquan Boldin, was 32 in Baltimore when they beat San Francisco in the Super Bowl, right? He catches 65 passes for around 920 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then comes to San Francisco, catches 85 passes for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. For a long time, he was the last 1,000-yard receiver for the 49ers since T.O. Like, he had a 20 catch increase, a near 200-yard increase, and he almost doubled his touchdowns with Colin Kaepernick throwing in the football. Brock Purdy's better than Colin Kaepernick was and is. Now, they're different. One is a better runner than the other. I get that. But Purdy's a better quarterback as a passer, by far, and really overall than Cap was. And you're getting Mike Evans, who I think Anquan and Evans are pretty comparable. Anquan was more durable before coming to San Francisco, like the immediate year prior to than Evans was, but they're pretty comparable, like in regards to where they're at in their careers. But there's guys like Isaac Bruce, who I know came in a really bad time to be a 49er receiver, but at age 35 with the Rams, had 55 catches for 733 yards and 4 touchdowns, comes to San Francisco, catches 61 passes for 835 yards and 7 touchdowns. An immediate increase in a terrible offense. Then you go to Randy Moss, who was bouncing around from team to team to team at 33 years old, catching 28 passes, 393 yards and 5 touchdowns. It looked like it was over. It was nail in the coffin, career done for Moss. He comes to San Francisco, and he wasn't great by any means, but the offense was so different. It was for Vernon Davis, and it was for Crabtree, and obviously for Frank Gore. But he caught 28 passes for around 430 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think you're looking at kind of an in-between of what Anquan brought to the table and what Bruce brought to the table. And at worst, you're seeing a Randy Moss-esque type impact, but you're having, with Mike Evans, a much better quarterback and a much better offensive system in an era designed for passing the football downfield in an offense that is getting more towards the drop back passing game than it has in previous years. So my expectations are kind of around the, can you fit in between Bruce and Bolden? Can you be at your high an 85-yard reception receiver for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns? And at your lowest, can you be a 61-yard reception receiver for 835 yards and 7 touchdowns? That, to me, feels very feasible. And that, to me, is what Mike Evans can be for the 49ers. A veteran piece that doesn't blow you away, but is uber productive if healthy on the outside, in an offense that needs that player. And there has been 3, mainly 2 of them being Bolden and Bruce in the past, that have come to San Francisco in much worse offenses with much worse quarterbacks and much worse systems, and had a very successful 1-year stint or a couple-year stint with the team. So I know there's been detractors of Evans and the injuries and stuff, and there certainly are concerns there, but I think Mike Evans is setting himself up for a very solid, at least 1 year with the San Francisco 49ers. And before we get to the Dre Greenlaw reunion, the Nate Hobbs edition, and the Bryce Huff retirement, I want to remind you here to like, share, and subscribe to the video. If you like the content, come back here every single week. There is tons of videos out, whether it's shorts, long form stuff, the audio podcasting platforms. And the great thing about this is if you come back, you get to use the promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase, whether it's the WBC, MLB, spring training. The NFL is, I know it's a couple months away, but it's coming soon, folks. Get ready for it. The NBA, the springtime concerts. Summer is 2 months away, 3 months away. They're almost here. Want to pre-order things? Go to SeatGeek.com. Use our promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com. You can save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Moving along, though, to, I think, what might be the story of the offseason thus far for San Francisco. Mike Evans is the big one, obviously, but when it comes to the heart and soul of the fan base, when it comes to the passion, the fire, the connection that this fan base, this team, the organization, the locker room, the front office has with one player, it's Dre Greenlaw. The Niners today, in a move that Doesn't shock me at all. Although I certainly have some questions. Inked Dre Greenlaw to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal, bringing him back home to where it all started in 2019 as a 5th-round draft pick, jumping on the scene and becoming one of the best will linebackers in football for nearly a 5-year stretch. Dre Greenlaw back to SF. You love to see it. In some people's eyes, never should have left. Last year, San Francisco essentially tried to DeAndre Jordan him and lock him in a room and say, forget Denver, come back to San Francisco. You had Robert Saleh calling him daily. Please, Dre, please, I want you back. Just give me one more year. And he got paid in Denver. A lot of money, and deservedly so, albeit off an injury. And that was my major drawback to Dre. He's hurt, didn't play a lot the year before. That's scary the way he plays. Leads to more injuries, which it's really exciting. I own a Dre Greenlaw jersey. I was wearing it the day he tore his Achilles. It hurt my heart deeply. I just got it and it hurt. And I love Dre Greenlaw. And, the one question I had immediately wasn't, can Dre play? Because we know Dre can play. We know he can play. When he's healthy, Dre Greenlaw is one of the best linebackers in football, and it's not close. He's just not. When he's healthy, the dude is a freaking animal. You want to go back to the mid-2000s and find those Energizer Bunny commercials? That is Dre Greenlaw. He's a havoc-wreaking son of a gun that wants to, load his pistol up and just start firing, because this dude is uncontrollable. He is the Tasmanian devil of a defense. And when he's out there, the Niners play a different brand of football. When you look at, what this defense has been like over the course of Shanahan's tenure, in the players they look for and who they want their players to emulate and copy, it's Dre Greenlaw. And you can't ignore that. You can't push back on that. You can't say it's wrong. It's right. It's right. Dre Greenlaw is the perfect San Francisco 49er when it comes to mentality, when it comes to aggressiveness, flying around, making plays. And when I say all those things, it's like, how can I dislike this? How can I have questions? How can I say, whoa, this is phenomenal? And then in the back of my mind go, but I have been pretty adamant that I didn't want any ex-Niners to return. And that includes Debo, that includes Leonard Floyd, that includes Dre Greenlaw, that includes other people out there. Eric Armstead, I don't want him back. I want to go forward. And while I say that, I see a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. And while we don't have the full breakdown yet, and that can change how I feel about the contract, because if it's like no guaranteed money, this is a great deal for San Francisco. There's no harm in this. There is no reason to kind of scoff at this, because a 1-year contract for a player when healthy is as close as elite as you can get to. The last thing you saw of great Dre Greenlaw was last year. Like, there were glimpses of, oh my God, if he can just be healthy, this dude can still be a top 5 linebacker. This guy can command an entire defense, be a green dot player, and just own the field. That's still there. And if the guarantees are around $3 million, $4 million, $4.5 million, okay, it's fine. Awesome. That's a great deal. I can't be mad, because Greenlaw's impact doesn't just start and stop in between the grid line or the gridiron, excuse me. Like, those white lines don't signify all of that Dre Greenlaw is to this team. Dre Greenlaw has an impact in the locker room. You've heard stories of Garrett Wallow, who was in Denver for like a few months with Greenlaw, say, we became friends like day one, and it was phenomenal. Now they're both in San Francisco. Nick Martin, last year's 3rd-round draft pick, who didn't make an impact at all, mentioned, that's the guy I watch in college for film to like emulate his tape and grow and learn and say, how is Dre playing football? That's what I want to be like. You see the outpouring of support from Lenore and Kittle and Fred Warner, of course, who's so happy to have him back. You saw last year when Denver and the Niners had joint practices, the emotions of being reunited on the sideline for the first time since Dre left. And that is like, that's what it's about. Yes, football matters and the play matters and everything, but it's like the emotional connection to Dre. You can even, to a much larger example, go to the Super Bowl. When Dre goes out, they fall apart defensively. And yes, they could have won that game still, but like, he held Travis Kelce still in his prime to 1 catch for 1 yard. Like, Dre Greenlaw was the X factor in why San Francisco was owning that Chiefs offense for the first half. And the minute he was gone, you've all seen the video. Fred turning around and immediately going, in one of the most heart-wrenching scenes, going, no! Because that's what Dre Greenlaw means to them and to the team. And you can't replace that. That's heart and soul stuff. Like, yes, you can talk about, well, Dre's past his prime and the injuries, but sometimes you just have to have heart and soul. Sometimes just being on the sideline changes things. And is that worth $7.5 million? I don't know. We'll see. But on the field, that to me is where the questions start to arise, because off the field, there is no negative at all. This is phenomenal. Dre Greenlaw's back, baby. This is awesome. But on the field, that's where more of the questions come up, because the first thing, just from a simple depth chart question, who's not starting? We know Fred's in there. You're not starting D. Winters. You're not starting Nick Martin. Okay. Just D. Winters in the last year of his contract wasn't great last year. He had a runway to secure himself the starting job and couldn't do it. There were glimpses of really good things early before Fred got hurt. Then Fred got hurt, and it was like, this is really bad. And Nick Martin, I think they believe in him, but the concussions are a problem now. And maybe they just think that giving Dre a 1-year contract and then, seeing what happens after that can either give them more time to assess Nick Martin and D. Winters, or decide to say, hey, let's move on. But I do have questions. Is D. Winters moving back to Sam linebacker? Is that what you want to do? Like, what's the rotation? Are you bringing back Dre to help D. Winters grow? Or is this no, Dre's a Niner for life again, and we're going to do 1-year deals forever if he can prove to be healthy? I don't know. Now, I'm not saying I'm like glued on to D. Winters has to play. No, because he wasn't good last year. Like, you have to find a linebacker. And I thought they would go somewhere else. Caden Ellis, Leo Chanel, the draft. But this in a way does kind of knock off the need for a linebacker in the draft, or at least, feel the pressure of getting one. This is a bad linebacker class. You don't need one now, really. And you can find day one linebackers every year. So I wonder if this kind of takes that off the board, or at least if they feel like they're in round 4 of like, oh, gotta get a linebacker. Not anymore. We have Dre Greenlaw. Now that's risky. Really risky, because Dre has missed 40% of the games in his career. That's a lot. We always argue about Pearsall and Bosa and now Michael. And there's been a lot of dudes that we have set back and we've critiqued of, you can't be healthy. You're never healthy. Dre Greenlaw is one of those players. Dre Greenlaw is one of the guys that, the label of when you're healthy applies, because 40% of the time you aren't healthy. You're missing games. And that's a big problem. You got to play. And maybe that is kind of if Dre's a starter and we kind of can guarantee him his time, Winters can be a nice depth guy, a bench player, and then grow in his 4th year in the NFL. Maybe. Is that the perfect strategy? I don't think so. I really don't. But, it's not like when Dre's out there, he's not phenomenal. And I really mean that. Like, I know I've been pretty rough on Dre last year, not wanting to bring him back and saying it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And he got paid a lot of money, which, funny enough, is the reason why San Francisco has gotten and received one of their 4th-round compensation picks. So Dre leaves for a year, gets a lot of money. Niners get a 4th-round comp pick back, and in 1 year's time, re-sign Dre Greenlaw because he gets cut because he wasn't healthy enough for the Broncos for way less money. And it's like, that's good business. Now, I think San Francisco would have paid Dre Greenlaw last year if they could have and weren't kind of cutting back on prices. And I think they kind of got lucky that the Denver Broncos paid up and took that risk. And now San Francisco benefits off of that and also gets Dre back in the building. And really, you know, kind of going back to the upside, the last 10 games of Dre Greenlaw's career, when he was out there for the Broncos, he was nasty. He was nasty. Now, I think there has been a dip in pass coverage because of an Achilles tear and calf injuries. Like, that's natural. You are going to slow down a year removed. Maybe there is some truth to the fact that, you know, now having kind of a year and a half to recover and rehab, that maybe he'll be healthy all year. God, I hope so. That would be awesome. Because with Denver last year, per PFF, 74.8 grade. That was 18th among linebackers. I'll take a top 20 linebacker again next to Fred Warner. Run defense, an area San Francisco struggled a lot in last year. Even when guys were healthy, had some problems at times, right? And it wasn't just the defensive line or the safeties. D. Winters and Bethune and those guys did not have fun against the run. But Dre last year, 82.3 run defense grade, 13th in football among linebackers. That's phenomenal. I'll take a top 15 run defending linebacker. Who wouldn't? And the coverage grade wasn't even that bad. Like, it wasn't great, but it was top 20 amongst linebackers. Whereas D. Winters was in the 30s all year. Like, Winters walked into the NFL of like, I can be a good coverage linebacker. I have speed. I have the IQ. And I know losing Warner hurt him, but he fell off a cliff. The D. Winters you saw in 2024 that we all said, why isn't he playing over Devondre Campbell? We all said, oh, D. Winters breakout season in 2025. And there was, again, spurts of that. But the minute Warner went down, it was like he just said, I'm going down with you. I'm healthy, but I'm going to suck too. It was like, God. And that was a big reason why the Niners run defense was bad through part of the year, the later half especially. But Dre was a 67.1 coverage grade and an 82.3 run defense guy. Like, far and away, like leaps and bounds and hills over the valleys of D. Winters better. And then you go to the playoffs last year where, again, he's kind of missing time in between. And like, when is Dre going to be healthy? I think he missed the first 5 games last year. And I was like, I told you so. This is why I don't bring him back. In the playoff game against, I think it was the Bills. The Patriots, where Bo Nix didn't play. And it was like, it's Jared Stidham trying to thread a needle because Nix ain't coming back. And it led to the Patriots going to the Super Bowl and losing to the Seahawks, unfortunately. But Dre was elite against the run. And 90.1 grade against the run. I think that game was in the snow. Like, it was all running the football. I'm pretty sure. And it was just like, God, like, Dre, like, there is plenty of juice left to squeeze from a player like Dre Greenlaw. It's just, if you do squeeze, will something pop? Will something break? Will there be a strain? And, you know, the Niners have been bringing in some risky guys. Mike Evans, older player. For all the good he can do, there is some risk there with the injuries. He's your ex-wide receiver now. Now Dre Greenlaw, your linebacker, he starts if he's healthy. If he's healthy. And so, you know, emotionally, as a fan, I'm so happy Dre's back. Because why wouldn't you be? I just have reservations as to can he remain healthy for 10, 15 games. Can you be out there in a playoff game when it matters most. And I hope he can. And I think on a 1-year, $7.5 million deal, like there's no risk involved. Like they have signed the insurance, they're double covered basically on this. Like if Dre isn't healthy, then D Winter starts again. Bethune starts, Nick Martin starts, maybe I don't know. And maybe they still draft a player. Maybe they bring back Eric Kendricks again. I don't know what the answers are, but the projections, at least, of having Fred and Dre back out there, like that's scary. Like, that is something. If those guys are maintaining their health for double-digit games next year, this middle of the Niners defense got exponentially better, run defense wise, coverage wise, and then you add in, Bosa from the Dallas Cowboys on the defensive line as a pass rusher, and you're like, whew, scary hours. And it's really impressive. And that's a risk, and that's a lot of hopes and buts and maybes and what ifs. But, sometimes guys don't really truly come back from injuries like a torn Achilles for a year and a half or 2 years. And it happens all the time. Like the Achilles feels more like what the ACL used to be in the early 2000s and 2010s of like, oh, it takes a year to kind of come back to play, and then a year to really get back to who you are, unless you're Adrian Peterson, which probably doesn't bode well for George Kittle, albeit Kittle and Greenlaw had very different injuries to the ACL, or to the Achilles, tears, but different spots. Like Dre's was like catastrophic of like, oh my God. Kittle's, albeit terrible in its own right, much less severe in the recovery process to a point where he can be back, in the early portion of the season, hopefully. But Dre, as a linebacker, you're scooting, you're covering, you're cutting everything. You're pedaling backwards at times and then cutting downhill as fast as possible. It's scary. So I am rooting for Dre Greenlaw to be out there and be healthy because, my God. My God. I now have a reason to put the 57 back on and wear it proudly, not wear it in shame of like, oh, this guy, the one time I wore it, he tore his Achilles. I can't wear it anymore. It is a bad thing for me. Now I can put it back on Sundays and on game days and say, this is what it's supposed to feel like. So selfishly, I am happy I get to not feel the pain of what transpired at Dre Greenlaw the first and right now last time I wore his jersey. So again, for myself, we get a redo. And I'm hoping for Dre, the same thing can be said. He can come back and be healthy and be awesome. But where the Dre Greenlaw things are positive, like, okay, this could be a good thing for San Francisco. That was met about 20 minutes prior with some shocking bad news of Bryce Huff just kind of retiring out of the blue. I think, a day after hyping up, what Bosa and Michael and, Osa bring to the defensive line and saying Huff on the other side on third downs. A defensive line is back in business, baby. Then it was like, never mind. Less than 24 hours later, because Huff's like, I'm done. And I'm going to retire at the age of 27. And there were already questions as to, what his future might be with Raheem Morris now being the defensive coordinator. Would they cut him? Would they trade him? What is your schematic fit on this defense? We didn't know. And I even predicted that Mac Jones would stay and Bryce Huff would be released or traded at some point in the offseason. And they didn't even have that option. The day after the new league year begins, I think a day even before his option bonus kicked in, he tells San Francisco and announces on social media, on Instagram, of like, I'm done. I have loved football for a long time, and now it's time for me to step away. Football gave me a lot, and now I want to give a lot back to the world and the earth and hopefully people. And I'm 29 years old, and to see somebody at 27 retire when they have everything ahead of them, $1 million contract, you would think typically he'd have another 5 to 6 years left in his career, maybe more. Like there's a real chance he has a near decade-long career ahead of him too, like still in front of him. And to walk away from that, like admittedly, I was a little pissed off for one, hurting the Niners defensive line, but two, I was like, man, like you're giving up everyone's dream. And I'm 29 trying to live mine, and he's 27. I'm like, man, dude, like this kind of sucks from like a very personal, deep down perspective. But then you kind of, wash away your own thoughts and go, good for Bryce Huff. This is, I'm sure, something that kind of weighed on him for a long time, because how do you turn down the potential of playing next to Nick Bosa and Micah Williams and now Osa and Purdy and Kittle and Warner and Greenlaw? Like, that's a really hard thing to turn down. And clearly he felt very positive this was the right choice for him. And so for Bryce Huff, man, like what he's stepping away to do, albeit I'm not too familiar with, but he wants to build safety infrastructures for the use of lithium batteries. And I'm not going to pretend I know anything about that. But if that makes the world a safer place and makes us and the earth a safer place, good on you. And if you feel like you've earned the money and the funds to feel like you can give back to the world and you feel confident and you're happy in your choices, that's awesome. Like Bryce Huff, we wish you the best of luck here on the show. Thank you so much for an amazing last season with the 49ers. I'm pretty sure he had the last sack by a Niner against the Philadelphia Eagles, which for him, maybe that was a full circle moment of like his second to last game, his last NFL win as of now came against the team that he won a Super Bowl with the year prior, but was benched for because he wasn't a schematic fit. Like that to me is a pretty full circle moment. And then he gets to play for the coach last year in Saleh that kind of made him a made man getting in that big contract in Philadelphia. And it's like, man, like not to say it's poetry and it all rhymes, but like there is some sense of closure in how Bryce Huff's right now career ends. That said, though, it leaves a massive hole on the end of San Francisco's defensive line. And now you have to ask, what do you do? Because my initial notes were, well, this is a shoo-in for the Niners to sign Ebiketie from the Falcons. But then he goes elsewhere. It was like, oh, crap. Now you're kind of stuck in the mud. And you're at least questioning, what's the plan? Because you can go round 1, round 2 edge rushers, and you could find, the guy you want at 27, which this regime, I'm sure, is gearing up to do right now, where yesterday was like, oh, well, they can go safety and they can go this. And it's like, well, they can also go edge rusher. It's like, well, now it feels like you have to go edge rusher in round 1 or at least round 2 early in this year's draft, or they can go to free agency. And this team did save $17 million by Huff retiring. That's not all in 1 year, though. That is a $5.3 million savings in 2026, which goes right into Dre Greenlaw's pocket. And then they'll have 11.7 mil next year. So they were kind of gifted this by Bryce Huff and him wanting to retire. They do save $17 million over the next 2 seasons, which has already been spent 20 minutes after he retired. So there isn't much relief there, but it does give them a little bit of more leeway of like, we did save some money to spend more money. And so that said, there aren't many other options that are like, that guy can start for you. You can go kind of the lower level, kind of C tier, maybe low B tier guys of Derek Barnett and Leonard Floyd, a guy that can start for you. He played in Atlanta last year like Floyd and was in San Francisco 2 years ago, albeit that would be kind of a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser, which is not what you want. You can maybe take a risk on Reddick, who fits the offense for sure, but is undersized as all get out, but maybe is that third down edge rusher can make sense. But that is a clear step down from Bryce Huff. And then there is the next guy. And I don't love this, but Joey Bosa, somebody that we've talked about plenty for the last few years, that I think, again, the stats are he hasn't had over 30 pressures and 5.5 sacks since 2021 in the single season, which it's not great. However, if they do sign Joey Bosa, this is likely like a 1-year deal. His last year, finish with your brother on the opposite side of you, which I do think there is something to the Niners signing Mike Evans, who is 33 come training camp, signing Dre Greenlaw to a 1-year deal for a lesser price, but is an older player in regards to younger drafted linebackers with a lot of injury history. And then getting Osa from the Dallas Cowboys, who is 27, so younger and under contract for the next 3 years. But there is a sense of they're getting veteran players to go for it again that can give you kind of a 1-year boost to get over the hump. And if the Niners are truly going for it and wanting veterans on cheap or cheaper-ish 1-year deals of value, then you sign Joey Bosa. Like that to me feels like where things could be leaning. Maybe you go Bosa and then you draft somebody else in round 2. That's an option. I don't love it. However, they don't really have any other options. Like you're not trading for Jonathan Grenard, who I would have loved. But Kyler is now in Minnesota. There is no Mac Jones and a 5th rounder or 4th rounder for Grenard. Because the asking price is, according to the sourcing or reports out there, it's a second and more. Now, maybe that's wrong, but that seems like the asking price. And because you're signing so many guys, Greenlaw, Evans, you traded for Osa, you're bringing back some of your own dudes, and you sign Nate Hobbs, you don't have much money left until you get Trent and Nick Bosa restructured. So they're kind of not in a bind by any means, but they are being lower on funds at the moment. So they're not getting a big name for a big price. But I think Joey Bosa for a 1-year deal for $10 million, that can make sense. Now, again, I wouldn't love that, but that's an option. And I think that's where things are trending. And again, why couldn't you pay $7.5 million for Ebiketie? Why couldn't you pay $10 million for Clavon Chason? And now you're kind of sitting here stuck. And they knew it was coming. Like Huff didn't say today, hey, I'm out. They knew this was happening. They were waiting for Dre Greenlaw to get cut by Denver. Like they knew these things were coming. So there is a little frustration of like, really? You really want Joey Bosa, who had one healthy year the last 5 seasons? Like that's what you want. And maybe those risks kind of pay off. And maybe I'm wrong. That's cool. I don't mind being wrong if it works out for San Francisco. But it does seem like things are trending in that direction. They're going to bring back Samo most likely. So you'll have Michael, Bosa, off the edge for your starters on your base downs. You'll probably get Joey Bosa involved in there in some capacity. You got Samo, who you'll bring back via the tender and match the offer he gets from somebody else. You got Keon White, and I don't think I'm forgetting anybody else, but still, like, that's not the worst room, and you add a draft pick in there, and it's like, okay, we got it, we're done. So I really think they are trending towards signing Joey Bosa, albeit not the biggest fan of that move, but I don't write the checks, so we'll see if it pays off. However, they did make another move tonight when you're out there, you're brushing your teeth, you eat dinner, you're yawning, getting ready to go to bed. San Francisco was getting to work, and they signed veteran cornerback Nate Hobbs to a 1-year deal worth $4.5 million, but 4.5 if you include incentives. Not the most expensive contract, but certainly a contract that indicates they expect him to play. Which, what do you do with Lenore and Green and Stout? I think Hobbs is a high upside veteran cornerback to have alongside or behind Green that can play the outside, but can also play the inside. Like, this is a nice 4th cornerback in your room, because they tried this last year with Trey Brown and it didn't work. He got beat out by a third-round draft pick in Stout, and they said, Chase Lucas, you're a better player. And they were right. They went and got Dallas Flowers, and we all said, he had a pretty good training camp from the Colts. And they cut him, and he barely played in Chicago. They're trying it again. They're trying the veteran 1-year stopgap. Can you back up one of these young players? And if they don't work out, you can be slid in there for a role. This gives them protection from Green having a bad third season. This also gives them protection if Stout has a rougher sophomore campaign, which you're not banking on or hoping for, but, you know, it has happened in the past, as seen by Green and Jair Brown. Yet there are some issues here. The last 4 seasons, Hobbs has missed 22 games. It's a big reason why he was cut by the Packers. And that's on top of the struggles he had last year. It's worth mentioning that he was the Packers' one of their big free agent signings a year ago. He signed a 4-year, $48 million deal with Green Bay. He was the big, Jair Alexander's gone. Nate Hobbs is the next guy up. And it didn't work out at all. Now, they didn't utilize him correctly. He should be playing more inside than outside. And that didn't work out for them. But he wasn't good. However, if you play him inside, you will see the benefits of a 6-foot corner that is a really good run defender. And if you go back to 2021 through 2024 with the Raiders, it's a much different player than who you saw in Green Bay last year. Against the run, through a 4-year stint, a really good sample size, a 73.5 run defense grade. That is playing close to the line, sniffing things out and getting your hands dirty. He's an aggressive down the hill run defender that wants to put his nose in things and kind of rough things up. That is a Niner defensive back if I've ever heard of one. But where the coverage really struggled last year with the Packers, and it's not great overall when you take into account man and zone coverage, when you just kind of zoom in on zone coverage overall from outside to inside stuff, a 68.9 zone coverage grade with the Raiders for 4 seasons prior to 2025. He had 2 picks and 1 touchdown. That'll play. That'll play for sure. Niners run a lot of zone coverage. Now, we'll see what Raheem Morris does with the Niners this year. There may be some changes in that capacity, but you can make that work, right? And in zone, again, a 92.9 passer rating allowed. It's not great by any means, but that'll play at the NFL. But I think the next part is why they brought him in. This dude is versatility. If it had a livable avatar, if it had a humanoid figure, if you will, he can play the outside, although it isn't his strong suit. He can play slot. That is his strong suit. Play nickel. That is the strong suit. He's played some in-the-box linebacker at times because he's that good of a run defender. And he's even played safety. You think about replacing Jason Pinnock, this is the guy. This feels like the Pinnock replacement. We'll see again how things work itself out, but the Niners like having that kind of versatile roaming player to put out there. And they wish it was Jair Brown, but it's not. Because Jair Brown can't play outside. He's a piss-poor coverage player. And in the box, he's too slow. Unless he becomes a linebacker, then things change. But he's not a linebacker. He plays safety. That makes it tough. And when you ask Jair to play the kind of free safety role, if you will, it's noticeable. He just can't do it. He's not that guy. But you put Hobbs in there, there's a real chance with his 4.4 speed, he's an explosive athlete and comes downhill in a hurry. There's a chance for Hill to either become, or Hobbs, to become either a nickel back if they want to move Stout around a little bit and have him play safety. I wouldn't do that, but maybe they want that, depending on matchups at times. Or Hobbs becomes the fourth cornerback and plays outside and inside and gives San Francisco a third player that can do that, with Green that can play inside and Lenore can play inside and Stout can also play inside and Hobbs can do kind of all those things at the same time as well. Or Hobbs becomes a safety. If you have 4.4 speed and you come down in a hurry looking for a big hit and you're okay in zone coverage, does that not scream Niners safety? You can tell that Raheem Morris, whether he tried for Jalen Hawkins or tried for Jaquan Brisker or Nick Cross, he values that versatile safety, cornerback hybrid, the linebacker safety hybrid. And I think Hobbs fits that, albeit isn't a linebacker. He has played in the box linebacker. He has played slot outside safety. So it's not going to be a massive boom of like, wow, what an A+ steal. Oh, San Francisco got a steal here. But it's like, you had a guy that once got a $12 million a year contract from your NFC North rival in the Packers. You don't get that for nothing. And now you have a guy that fits at least the archetype of what Raheem Morris likes in his secondary. He can move around, he can play the matchups right and everything. And, I think the Hobbs deal can actually pay off in a big way for San Francisco. I think he'll be in there playing with Jair Brown at safety and Mustafa at safety, and they'll move him around. Like, this to me feels less indicative of a Chase Lucas replacement, albeit he does play special teams as well. So there is that involved on top of that. But he also, I think this feels more like a Pinnock replacement over a Chase Lucas one in my eyes. Or I don't think Hobbs is brought into play and start all the games. I think on paper, they prefer it be Demo, Stout, and Green kind of grows up in year 3 and kind of becomes a more consistent player. But even then, Green is a better man coverage corner. And now Hobbs is a zone coverage corner. So that, again, furthers the how do you play the matchups and your coverages? How do you give offenses different looks? How do you give them kind of the harder game plan to execute? I really like this move. It's not going to cost you too much, $4 million at least. And that's for a fourth cornerback that you believe can start for you. And based on money and schematic fit and what Morris likes to do defensively, like, Hobbs is going to play a lot. And it's an upgrade over Pinnock, who Pinnock had all the, Pinnock had a knack for getting to the football, but it didn't happen in San Francisco for whatever reason, probably because the bad defensive line and everything, but he just didn't do that. And I think there's a difference in Hobbs because Hobbs isn't that player. Hobbs is not a ball skill dude. He's can I keep the play in front of me, run defender that can move around to 5 different positions and go crazy. So there are differences even in that comparison for Pinnock and Hobbs, but I like this move a heck of a lot more. He's explosive. He's faster if you value that a lot. I think San Francisco had to find some speed on defense, and I think they got some tonight with Hobbs. He was cut 2 days ago and was signed immediately. I think he is the second post-June 1st release that San Francisco got, Greenlaw and Hobbs. So they're finding guys that were once kind of highly paid, highly touted players in free agency that kind of busted for 1 year. Now you're bringing them over. So that can pay off in a big way, or it can, blow up in your face. Time will tell, but it's a nice move. I like it a lot. A year ago, had they signed him, I would have said, great. Now they get him for 1/3 of the price, and he can be a solid depth guy or maybe a starter at safety or cornerback if somebody struggles, or in just in case he's better. But, we'll see. But good move by San Francisco. And to end, some smaller notes to wrap things up. First small note, Jauan Jennings is still a free agent. And I know I asked it. I'm sure you're asking it too. Could he come back to San Francisco? Like, maybe there's a way, playing big slot, being a red zone guy. Purdy loves him. They had great chemistry. Could it make sense? According to Matt Mayoko, Jauan Jennings is still expected not to return. So in the last 2 days, we've heard no Debo and no Jauan from Ayoko. So we'll see if that persists and continues throughout the offseason. But if the asking price comes down, there aren't many guys left out there to sign that can be a game changer, and Jauan can actually be that. But my assumption is Giants and Titans make a lot of sense. And I also wouldn't be surprised if the Bears or the Chiefs are involved. Those 4 teams could make a ton of sense for Jauan Jennings. The last note on the show, kind of tying in the Bryce Huff discussion, is the Niners have a visit scheduled with Texas Tech edge rusher Romello Height. Whether it's this week or soon, I'm not sure, but they have that scheduled for the next couple days or so. And Height's not going to be a first-round draft pick. He's probably going to be a day 2 guy, whether it's round 3, maybe he goes round 4. We'll see. But they lost a pass rushing specialist in Bryce Huff, and Height, funny enough, is a 6'3", 230-pound, holy crap, that's tiny, 25-year-old pass rushing specialist from Texas Tech, who the last 2 years has totaled a 17.5 pass rush win rate. So you want to talk about what's the solution? Maybe it's somebody like Height out of the draft, but we'll see what transpires in the next few months. Free agency isn't over with yet, so the draft stuff can kind of wait a little bit. This is why I don't do mock drafts until late March, early April, because at that point, free agency happens and I can say, well, these are actual team needs, instead of saying they need all these things. They might need 2 of those things when it's all said and done. So a lot to happen, a lot of things to take place still. We're waiting for Trent to re-sign. We're waiting for Bosa to get redone, and maybe even waiting for the other Bosa to sign with the 49ers. So a lot to look forward to, which means a lot of reasons to like, share, and subscribe to the show. Hit that bell icon because we go live multiple times a week and we're always putting out content. And if Joey Bosa signs, if the Niners make another move in the next few days, weeks, months, years, decades, I don't know, you'll come back right here and get a breakdown for it all. If you could, on top of that, follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers is the 49ers.access is the Instagram. Oh my God. I should know that by now. I do this every single day. And use our promo code 49ersaccess at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Drop your comments down below. Do you like the Nate Hobbs signing? Are you happy Dre Greenlaw's back? Or are you like, I'm not buying it too much? And what'd you make of Mike Evans' first press conference with the media out here in the Bay Area? You like what he said? Do you question what he said? And what move do you want San Francisco to make of the remaining free agents? There's not many left that can make an impact. Which one do you want? Is it Joey Bosa? Is it Leonard Floyd? Is it Haason Reddick? Is it somebody else I haven't mentioned just yet? Drop those thoughts down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And as always, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.